This video is an attempt to analyze and explain the structure that has been destroyed and to understand it in connection with the spreading of the fire.
Connecté sur cela pour voir.
Next Sunday, the doors of the Cathedral of Notre Dame in Paris will open to the public for the first time since April 2019, when a devastating fire nearly destroyed the great Gothic church.
The new rooftop and famous spire will be rebuilt using the same oak and lead that burned and melted in the Inferno, using medieval tools and techniques. A sea of scaffolding inside as they bring Notre Dame back to life.
Thick, yellowish fumes, a billowing smoke cloud typical of burning lead. On the 15th of April, more than 300 tons of lead went up in smoke. Thick, yellowish fumes, a billowing smoke cloud typical of burning lead. On the 15th of April, more than 300 tons of lead went up in smoke.
The new rooftop and famous spire will be rebuilt using the same oak and lead that burned and melted in the Inferno.
The ceilings here of the nave are rib vaults that combine two facade segments to 6-part vaults. Before installing these filigree components, however, the roof trusses had to be erected above it. The tracery on the upper platform hung the 3 bells of the clock of Notre Dame. Here it becomes particularly clear how artfully all exposed parts were covered with lead. This work, which requires a lot of skills and craftsmanship, was executed by a company called Gaget, Gauthier et Cie in Paris. However, this company became famous a little later with another work, the Statue of Liberty. About 250 tons of lead have been used for the spire, but this information isn't very reliable. Perhaps this number contains the other decorations for the roof as well. Here is a chimera in the tradition of pagan demon defense, as it was quite common in churches in the Middle Ages, similar to the numerous gargoyles. On the western end of the roof ridge, above the apse, stood this beautifully crafted cross. At the foot of the spire there was additional ornamentation that descended into the roof valleys on 4 sides and separated them into 2 valleys with an intermediate ridge. This ridge was practical for the proper drainage of water. In 2019, a large steel scaffold was erected around the crossing to restore this area. The scaffold stood on 4 scaffolding towers, which had been led up from the cornice between nave and transept already in 2018, and in January and February 2019 the attic had been extensively treated against rot and fungi with special chemical substances. In the course of the external scaffolding construction, scaffolding material was also extensively installed in the attic. You can see that all workers wore protective clothes and masks, probably because of the recently applied chemicals. Many temporary platforms were built by installing long aluminum traverses at different heights. There was also a temporary electrification with a distributor at the foot of the crossing tower. The attic had previously been without any electrical installations for fire safety reasons. The historic catwalks were covered with plastic material and secured with plastic nets to prevent material and tools from falling onto the wall. A first smoke detector alarm at 6:20 p.m. was classified as a false alarm because no fire was found. It was not until the second alarm that a fire in the attic was discovered, but then it had evidently already spread very far in the crossing. Starting point of the first externally visible smoke were the roof valleys at the crossing tower. The first visible flames flared a few minutes later. The roof lead in the area of the roof valleys had now melted at the foot of the spire, with slightly greater intensity on the southeast side as far as that can be judged. The roof trusses in the crossing were apparently already in full blaze. The fire began probably in the area of the clock and had a much lower dynamics at first. It is not easy to imagine the transition from a small fire to the full blaze of a rather flame-retardant oak structure. But from the point when the first flames came out, the further dynamics of the fire are completely understandable. Ventilation of the roof structure from below was provided through the many vents over the walls. After the melting of the lead and the burning of the roof cladding, the crossing provided the effect of a chimney, so that a very hot fire could develop just below the crossing tower, where the highest density of wooden construction was. At the same time, the fire spread out on the roof ridges at the crossing. At first, the fire crept eastwards under the medieval roof of the choir. The timber density in the transept was a little bit lower immediately below the ridges, so that their roof trusses did not light up so distinctly from the timbers near the ridge. Rather, the entire roof cladding ignited over the whole surface by the increasing fire heat from the inside. Here you can see the southwestern dormer. The clock came to a stop at 6:30. If this is the actual time, it is 10 minutes after the first and 13 minutes before the second fire alarm. That, too, could be a hint for a breakout of the fire near the clock. The strength of the fire is also indicated by the fact that a light wind of 3 meters per second from east-southeast did not significantly influence the direction of the spread of the fire. The roof of the choir even burned down to the apse against the wind, while about half of the nave roof was still standing. From the roof of the choir, the half-cone over the apse collapsed at last. While in the straight roof the rafters often toppled individually, the massive construction over the apse fell as one part in a northwestern direction onto the walls. When this part tipped over, yellowish-white flames with white smoke were observed, probably caused by the lead oxide from the lead plates. The cross on the roof ridge struck north on the masonry, where it stuck hanging over. A short time later, around 7:56, the spire tipped to the northwest and broke apart a few meters above the upper balcony. The upper part of the tower fell right into the nave. The lower part of the tower then plunged further south, approximately in the direction of the diagonal of the crossing. It got stuck in the scaffolding. Perhaps the most spectacular recordings of the entire fire show how the fire on the roof can be seen through the hole in the vault, while through the round vault opening in the middle of the crossing repeatedly embers are falling down. Another very small hole is already visible in the walls of the crossing. It was perhaps caused by the lengthwise impact of a timber, the clock weight, or a bell. The burning material in the nave was interspersed with scaffolding material from the roof, but not from the outer scaffolding, which stood up. With the following burning of the roof up to the west gable, a new situation was created for the firefighters. While the spreading of the fire previously had been unstoppable, now there was a need and at the same time an opportunity to prevent at least a fire in the belfries. This succeeded, albeit only partially. The north tower lit up at 9 p.m. in the lower area, exactly in the direction of the wind. However, the firefighters were able to extinguish this fire before it spread to the entire belfry. At about 10 p.m. there was a slow decrease in the heat on the walls. At this time, several jet tubes from work lifts were aimed at the fire from all sides, and it was clear that it would become a race against time if one wanted to preserve the walls from overheating and collapsing. This would have jeopardized the stability of the entire structure, since the walls in the area of the upper level would have been in great danger of tipping, especially in the case of an asymmetrical collapse of the walls. A domino effect would have been possible. It was not until 11 p.m. that the fire was under control and that the construction was not in danger anymore. A drone picture taken at about 10 p.m. shows the distribution of the fire. Some dark places are the hole in the nave vault and some remains of the roof, for example, one half-moon-shaped part on the trier vault. An additional fire was probably caused by falling parts on the side aisle roofs. Luckily, they have a different construction with stone slab covering. Incidentally, the firefighting attacks also took place through the doors in the west gable of the nave. When looking from the southern tower, it is noticeable how strong the fire still burns in the area of the crossing, even though it started there. But of course, there was also the biggest amount of wood. So it is understandable that during the night the vault of the crossing no longer withstood and collapsed, probably due to failure of the mortar joints in the apex. In the morning, the extent of damage was obvious. The entire vault of the crossing is missing. The stone blocks from the ribs can be seen in fire debris. The modern altar depicting the evangelists is damaged but still standing. Through the hole in the vault you can see the remnants of the trifle beam, which still protrude from the cornice to the middle. Another vault hole was created in a field of the northern transept. It is unclear why the vault gave way at this point, but perhaps there was a slight pre-damage by settlement cracks, or it was hit at an unfavorable angle by some timbers. This can also be considered as a reason for another small hole in the trier. Here is a view from the former attic access in the southern transept. The view corresponds exactly to that shown in the first section of this film. A few questions cannot be clarified with the present images and can be answered only later with the cleanup. For example, where is the hole led? Is it lying in big lumps on the vault? Or where are the bells of the spire? Are there any remnants of the clock? Or why did a small roof area not burn away near the staircase of the southern transept? In summary, one can say that the fire has destroyed a very important and historically significant part of Notre Dame de Paris.
flames tore through the roof of Notre Dame on the evening of April 15, 2019, and spread with incredible speed and ferocity, engulfing her 200-foot spire.
Everybody stops.
Centuries from now, this fire will be just another chapter in the story of Notre Dame.
Thick, yellowish fumes, a billowing smoke cloud typical of burning lead. On the 15th of April, more than 300 tons of lead went up in smoke. Thousands watched as the cathedral burned, many of them completely unaware they were in range of these toxic fumes.
More than 450 tons of lead in the roof and spire melted in the blaze. Partially vaporized in the air in the form of microparticles, the lead presented a health risk for both Parisians and site workers.
The laboratory researchers are also grappling with what happened to the lead roof. Parts of it reached the melting point of 300 degrees Celsius, dripping into the vaults and gutters. But some of the lead became airborne. Yellow smoke billowed from the cathedral as a result. The lead powder that settled after the fire is toxic to humans, making researchers take careful precautions when working in the cathedral.
Mécanismes qui ont découlé de l'incendie.
So far, we've gained an understanding of the mechanisms that came into play during the incident,
C'est un des problèmes extrêmement.
how the fire has affected the stones,
C'est vaporisé dans l'air.
how the lead spread into the air and covered some of the walls. That's one of the most important issues.
Travaux qu'on fait ici au laboratoire.
Here in the laboratory, a lot of our work has to do with removing lead,
Préservé.
so that it's safe for those who are carrying out the job on the site.
Donc, qu'est-ce que nous avons appris?
So, in all, we've learned that the fire that happened at Notre Dame wasn't very different to a fire at any other building.
Un autre bâtiment.
What is different
C'est l'émotion.
is the emotion that comes with it.
Notre-Dame.
I think it's a strange vanity that makes us think we're the only ones in the solar system.
I would like anybody actually wants to go spectacular.
During the fire, hundreds of tons of lead melted and then settled as toxic dust all over the building, adding to the dust that had been building up since the 19th century.
We must remove this pollution, in particular the lead oxides that have settled and mixed with the initial dust, so that we can work in healthy conditions that comply with safety standards to protect the workers who will be working on this site.
The new rooftop and famous spire will be rebuilt using the same oak and lead that burned and melted in the Inferno, using medieval tools and techniques.
The team will soon begin an unprecedented challenge to rebuild the forest in under 2 years.
We're going to reuse techniques that are extremely similar to what was used, because it's technically necessary.
thick yellowish fumes, a billowing smoke cloud typical of burning lead. On the 15th of April, more than 300 tons of lead went up in smoke.
More than 450 tons of lead in the roof and spire melted in the blaze. Partially vaporized in the air in the form of microparticles, the lead presented a health risk for both Parisians and site workers.
Le carillon retentit à 8 km à la ronde.
Toured the cathedral on Monday morning, and they were still nearby when smoke was first seen that evening.
And we're walking down the street, and we see this yellow, thick, white smoke. This is not a normal color for smoke.
During the fire, hundreds of tons of lead melted and then settled as toxic dust all over the building, adding to the dust that had been building up since the 19th century.
We must remove this pollution, in particular the lead oxides that have settled and mixed with the initial dust, so that we can work in healthy conditions that comply with safety standards to protect the workers who will be working on the site.
a hazmat suit and a gas mask. After being accused of minimising the risks of lead poisoning, the city of Paris wants to show it's taking the problem seriously.
So we use this spray, we put the product on the entire surface, leave it for half an hour, and then we shovel it up.
All this work comes at a price. The city of Paris is paying €200,000 to have the playground decontaminated. The level of lead here measures at 3,400 micrograms per square metre, above the 1,000 defined as safe by the region's environmental authority.
About the restoration effort taking place to bring Notre Dame back to its former glory, let's head to a laboratory in the Parisian suburbs to meet some of the scientists working behind the scenes. Can you tell us what you're doing in this laboratory?
In this laboratory, we're studying the materials that make up the building. For Notre Dame, the most important aspect is the stone. We need to analyze it to help architects who specialize in historic buildings to understand in what state the cathedral currently is, to know what will need to be changed, and whether it will be possible to leave the stones that are still in place as they are. Our role is to shed light on the condition of the materials that make up the cathedral so that architects can then do their work.
And what have you learned about Notre Dame? Anything in particular that you've learned through your work here?
Pour l'instant, nous apprenons surtout à comprendre les mécanismes qui ont découlé de l'incendie.
So far, we've gained an understanding of the mechanisms that came into play during the incident. How the fire has affected the stones, how the lead spread into the air and covered some of the walls. That's one of the most important issues. Here in the laboratory, a lot of our work has to do with removing lead, so that it's safe for those who are carrying out the job on the site. So, in all, we've learnt that the fire that happened at Notre Dame wasn't very different to a fire at any other building. What is different is the emotion that comes with it.
Donc c'est pour ça que les cordiers interviennent, pour justement évoluer au-dessus de cette zone, sans toucher, et déblayer petit à petit. Ils ne sont pas sur leurs jambes, donc en fait ils ont pas la force de leurs jambes, donc ils sont tout le temps en équilibre. Utiliser une pelle en suspension sans poser les pieds, c'est vraiment plus compliqué. Toiture en plomb, il y avait vraiment des tonnes et des tonnes de plomb, donc ce plomb-là, il n'a pas disparu. Il est là, il est devant vous, il est dans le rein des voûtes, donc il y a des grandes mares, des grandes flaques de plomb. Toute la matière du toit qui a été réduite, on va dire, en poussière, avec des fois des morceaux de cuivre, des morceaux de charpente, des clous. Tous ces éléments-là ont une histoire. C'est des morceaux de Notre-Dame qui sont certes brûlés ou dégradés, mais ils sont quand même considérés comme des vestiges.
Voilà, par exemple un clou comme ça, clou forgé encore, on va le conserver, on va le mettre de côté. On a plein de petits fragments de bois qui pourront être analysés, qui permettront d'avoir des informations sur l'essence de l'arbre qui a été utilisé, sa datation, qui permettront de restituer des informations sur le climat à l'époque de construction.
Les
éléments de l'arc de la nef qui sont effondrés.
Parmi toutes les trouvailles que j'ai pu faire dans ces 2 ans, il y a eu en particulier d'avoir trouvé un élément de l'horloge de Notre-Dame, d'avoir extrait aussi des cloches, des fragments de cloches, les premiers clous par exemple, les tout premiers clous médiévaux qui sont des grands clous très grands, très bien forgés.
One very complex operation was the dismantling of the scaffolding which surrounded the Gothic-style spire prior to the blaze. It took 6 months using a giant crane to prise apart the 40,000 melted tubes weighing 200 tons. The collapse of the ancient oak frame brought down a section of the vaults. Among the rubble were piles of charred pieces of wood from the frame and the spire, as well as metal objects, lead sheets and ironwork. A plan was drawn up. Remote-controlled robots moved in first, followed by a team of archaeologists. A systematic 2D and 3D survey using photographs made it possible to record the position of each piece of wood. They were then set aside, inventoried and stored. More than 450 tons of lead in the roof and spire melted in the blaze. Partially vaporized in the air in the form of microparticles, the lead presented a health risk for both Parisians and site workers. Lead dust decontamination operations were carried out around the building and, in particular, in the square. The biggest organ in France, built in 1733, was saved from the flames, but covered in a layer of lead dust. It took 4 months to remove the oak console, weighing 500 kilos, and the 8,000 pipes arranged in 115 sets.
And we went and saw firsthand.
There we go, Notre Dame.
Bonjour. We were saying that if you to walk past it, you wouldn't know there was anything wrong because the facade still looks as incredible as ever.
Inside the nearly 1,000-year-old cathedral, it's a different story. We head up to the roof, where the destruction began.
We're about 40 meters up here.
The fire was started up here by an electrical fault, high up in the vaulted ceiling. And this is what it did, and where that famous spire fell.
This is the most obvious damage to Notre Dame de Paris, the enormous hole that remains in the roof of the building. Take a look, you can see the charred ends of what was once the oak vault that kept this part of the roof in place. And it was those 200 tons of lead melting down on top of the roof here, the lead that once lined this roof, that caused this part of the roof to collapse. There are now anywhere between 150 to 200 people working on Notre Dame at any one time, slowed down, of course, by the pandemic.
Here, workers dig for remains on the roof. All the old wood, stone and metal has to be taken out and analysed before they rebuild. Precious fragments handed over to archaeologists who'll see if there's anything they can salvage. Whatever can't be used in the restoration will be preserved to study the nearly 1,000-year-old structure. Back on the ground, debris is collected and brought into tents. In this one, restorators have collected the lead-filled beams that fell as Notre Dame burned.
It's a huge operation, and we're actually not even allowed into this part because they're so worried about lead inhalation. You need a specialised mask in order to go in.
In another site, shelves lined with stones.
So these are all the stones that were found on the floor of Notre Dame that fell during the fire.
C'est ça.
Each one is meticulously placed in order to recreate the part of the structure that no longer stands. I asked the archaeologist what answers she hopes to find among the debris. She says there's much to discover.
Notre Dame's cathedral roof, restoration now underway, revealed in new exclusive images. And this morning, broadcast for the first time, stunning aerial video of the gaping hole where her famous spire once stood. Contrast that to the night of flames 3 years ago, Parisians watching helpless as smoke and fire rose above the city, that world-famous spire collapsing. National Geographic's Rob Kunzig, based in the US, witnessed the Gothic icon burn from the banks of the Seine. The new rooftop and famous spire will be rebuilt using the same oak and lead that burned and melted in the Inferno, using medieval tools and techniques.
In the days following, firefighters gave way to a new team on the front line, restoration scientists from the Laboratory for Historical Monuments. These researchers were tasked with evaluating the condition of the damaged stone, mortar, and metal, and guiding engineers on the best way to restore the cathedral. Even as they try to reclaim what was lost, the lab researchers and others are also analyzing samples of wood and stone for clues to the cathedral's medieval past. Their first order of business, stabilizing the cathedral. The lead roof and the wooden timbers that supported it were mostly gone, and there were holes in the vaulted stone ceiling. That threatened a delicate balance of forces between the vaults, which push outward on the cathedral walls, and the flying buttresses, which provide an inward stabilizing force. In order to steady the structure, temporary wood supports were installed to prevent the buttresses from toppling the walls. The laboratory researchers are also grappling with what happened to the lead roof. Parts of it reached the melting point of 300 degrees Celsius, dripping into the vaults and gutters. But some of the lead became airborne. Yellow smoke billowed from the cathedral as a result. The lead powder that settled after the fire is toxic to humans, making researchers take careful precautions when working in the cathedral. Before restoration even begins, much of the cathedral must be decontaminated, and the mangled scaffolding put in place for renovations prior to the fire must be removed. Meanwhile, the exposed interior and fallen fragments of the cathedral have provided new opportunities for research. These finds provide glimpses into the detailed construction of Notre Dame. It took 182 years to complete, with signature pieces like the spire added well after in the 19th century. Centuries from now, this spire will be just another chapter in the story of Notre Dame.
Thick, yellowish fumes, a billowing smoke cloud typical of burning lead. On the 15th of April, more than 300 tons of lead went up in smoke, but it did not disappear altogether.
The fire completely destroyed the structure, especially the roof's massive lead coating and the 46-metre-tall spire, also covered in lead. Throughout the night, the fire was carried east to west by the wind, and it picked up the dust and slag that came from the melting of this roof out towards the plaza in front of the cathedral. So the next day, with police and laboratory assistance, we began to map the district and the cathedral's immediate vicinity to find out where the lead ended up and what were the pollution risks.
These first samples showed the risks were extremely high close to Notre Dame. Nearby streets were immediately closed off to public access and steps taken to avoid spreading the toxic dust. The cathedral doors were sealed, and construction workers took extra special precautions.
Workers use respiratory equipment and disposable overalls. For lead, the protocol is twofold. First, protect the workers so they don't poison themselves when they're inside the cathedral. But second, and above all, when they clock off work, to ensure they do not spread the lead outside the polluted zones.
Since the fire, the stones of the plaza are washed every day. The water used for cleaning, now contaminated, is then taken away. Lead was also found in the gardens which border the cathedral. Several centimetres of earth had to be scraped away to rid it of the deposits found there. Even after all this, the lead can still pose a toxic risk, especially for children. Any level of the metal in blood can be dangerous, according to the World Health Organization. It reports even levels less than 5 micrograms per deciliter of blood can impact children's intelligence. Health groups are demanding that everyone exposed to the poisonous dust since the fire be monitored. The air around Notre Dame is no longer polluted. The lead dust has settled. The risk today is ingesting it. But during the fire, thousands watched as the cathedral burned, many of them completely unaware they were in range of these toxic fumes.
When Notre Dame caught fire in 2019, millions watched a piece of history burn. An international treasure nearly destroyed. The challenge to rebuild it huge. I saw the scale of the damage in early 2021, the massive hole in the roof still wide open. But now, just a year till completion, the finish line is in sight. And you can see the spire. We climb our way towards the very top of the new spire. You can see the stonework here. This is all completely new. It was too destroyed to recover, and this woodwork, the beams have all been freshly laid, and you can see that bunch of flowers. That's a gift from the carpenters to say that they're done with this part. Hundreds of feet up, the scale of this colossal project is clear.
And here we are, right on the top of Notre Dame de Paris. I mean, take a look at this view, it's extraordinary. And the spire is back. I mean, those images, when the spire initially crumbled down into the church when it was on fire, they sent shockwaves all over the world, and it was a trauma for France. It being back now, standing tall over the city, it's a rebirth.
Coming up, we're going to take you inside the race to restore Notre Dame with France 24's exclusive report on efforts to meet a 2024 deadline set by President Macron. 2024, the year the French capital hosts the Olympics. We'll ask about the decision to rebuild the lead spire and wooden roof beams to original specs, and what Notre Dame means, not only to Paris and France, but to the whole world, what with donations pouring in from around the globe. With its 850 years of trials and tribulations, it's much more than a house of worship. What will it represent when it and the rest of France reopen in earnest? Today in the France 24 debate, we're going inside Notre Dame. Joining
Dame sent a shockwave through the heart of Paris. Especially the island on which it stands, the Île de la Cité.
Catherine, on your Twitter account, you posted pictures of yourself in that full gear.
Right? Did you see that?
Because when you're actually inside, there's that fear of lead poisoning. Right?
Absolutely. There's an awful lot of difficulties which people working in this building site have to overcome every time they turn up for work.
Is the lead a problem?
Yes, I think the lead is a problem for the past, for what happened, and it's also a problem for what is going to happen, because if we imagine that they are going to put lead over the charpente next year, it will be a problem.
A bid with lots of architects who submitted their ideas, and the idea was we're going to rebuild it to original specs. And you saw in that report that woman saying they're not changing anything from the last big renovation from the mid-19th century. Marc Mimran, you wrote an op-ed piece in Le Monde where you were scathing about it. You denounced the fact that they've decided to rebuild it as it was.
I said that it should be rebuilt as it was from the exterior, but why should all that being built out of wood, tons of wood that is going to be the charge of the next fire, and then lead, who is completely forbidden now. So I was astonished that they didn't think about the idea that it could be also the opportunity to make a new modern way of building.
Was it an architectural decision or a political decision, rebuilding it the way it was?
Both, I would say. I would guess both. No, officially, it's very much an architectural decision.
The aftermath. Nearly a month now since Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris went up in flames, and there are major discussions going on about how to restore it and to what. The French Parliament is right now debating a bill. And there are some new images out that are very interesting from French architect Vincent Calbeau, who is proposing this, transforming the cathedral into something of an eco-friendly building that would generate more energy than it consumes. He's also proposing an aquaponic farm, and that would produce tons of fruits and vegetables. Restoring Notre Dame, though, isn't the only issue at hand. Because of all of this smoke and the fire and everything that was in the building, there are growing health concerns about toxins. In a statement released yesterday, Paris police say the fire left high levels of lead all around the cathedral, but they say it's not a threat. Some environment groups disagree.
There appear to be two different opinions on all of this. This week, on Thursday, in fact, police in Paris, as you say, issued a statement. They said that although lead levels on sidewalks and gardens immediately adjoining Notre Dame were high, in fact up to 65 times higher than the recommended limit, they added there was no risk in the wider neighbourhoods surrounding the Paris landmark, saying lead poisoning usually builds up over years of exposure. And bearing in mind there have been no reports of of acute lead poisoning in the area. It looks like the French authorities are playing down the threat. They have issued advice for locals to take precautions such as regularly washing hands and so on. So that's one opinion about the impact of all that lead that went up in flames during last month's fire, Heather. Environmental groups, though, are a little bit more concerned. They've actually likened the cathedral site now to toxic waste, and later today, one group...
Few staffers race through falling embers to rescue precious relic. At the same time, a huge decontamination project was mounted to remove lead tiles that had melted from the burning roof and spire and all the toxic lead dust spread by the fire. 4 years on, workers still take extraordinary precautions against lead poisoning. We had to wear disposable hazmat suits to enter the cathedral. Tons of rubble had to be removed. Paintings and stained glass windows were taken away for restoration, and twisted steel scaffolding erected for ongoing restoration work had to be dismantled.
Who can forget the moment the spire collapsed in April 2019? Now, it will be rebuilt in an identical fashion. When the fire broke out in April 2019, there was construction taking place in the roof. Scaffolding was placed around the spire. The fire caused the scaffolding to melt and it encrusted on the building. Now, construction crews are working around the clock to remove the metal bit by bit. Take a look.
Piece after piece, the mechano maze of metal weighing down on Notre Dame for over a year is lifted by a team suspended in the skyline. A task made all the more difficult as the scaffolding pipes have become partly welded together by the fire. Maximum concentration is required for this delicate operation, which has been meticulously prepared over the past few months.
We can't just bring in a helicopter and lift it off because there's the cathedral underneath. We don't want to cause any extra damage.
Didier Cuizet, the head of the operation, has planned the dismantling down to the smallest details.
Once we get to there, we'll come back here again, before doing a little bit at the opposite side, because we're balancing out the weight. We've calculated it with the plans that we made in advance. We can't just take off 5 meters on this side and leave 10 on the other. That would unbalance the structure.
Before cutting them out, the workers must secure each and every metal tube by tying it up. This unprecedented operation calls for specialized equipment.
We've installed a system which was specially designed for the operation. So there are 2 big pillars which sit above the scaffolding, and on this there are automized systems.
Due to weather conditions and the COVID crisis, the operation is behind schedule. To catch up, the work is continuing around the clock.
Bon bah les gars, on s'habille, on s'échauffe et c'est parti.
They're working above Notre Dame's vaults, where before the fire there was a roof. Every last fragment of timber, lead and stone must be removed. It's another top priority on site.
Architects need the surface to be as clean as possible so they can assess the state of the vaults and decide whether workers can be safely authorized to go under the vaults. So our goal is really to clean up as best as possible.
Every night, 4 tons of rubble are brought out.
So, in all, we've learned that the fire that happened at Notre Dame wasn't very different to a fire at any other building. What is different is the emotion that comes with it.
So we know how things survived the fire. Do we know what caused the fire?
No, not at all, because the investigation is still ongoing. And the police haven't finished their investigation because some parts at the top of the building can't be reached. All they've been able to work with for now is what fell into the cathedral.
Thank you.
Then, though, came the big promise that it would be rebuilt for 2024 in time for the Olympic Games in Paris. The huge works got underway, colossal works, extremely difficult, and all right in the middle of the first wave of coronavirus and with the area covered as well in lead dust, highly toxic, released from the fire in the roof.
This oak is indeed among the 8 chosen to form the base of the spire. To be specific, a giant wooden frame at the centre of this intricate structure. It's due to be rebuilt in the same way as the 19th century spire which disappeared the night of the fire. A few metres from Giuseppina's building site, the housing of the great organ was spared by the flames, so has not been moved, nor have its giant front pipes. But the 8,000 others that make up the instrument, as well as its wind chests, have been removed one by one and are being renovated far away from Paris. The workshop is restoring the 19 wind chests of the organ right at the heart of the instrument. The wooden base, which holds thousands of pipes. The wind chests were contaminated with lead, so had to be treated before being delivered to the workshop. And its great organ, astonishingly safe from the fire. Neither the flames nor water from the fire brigade harmed it. However, it was contaminated by lead and had to be completely dismantled to be cleaned up. So it has to be tuned again.
Engineers race to install supports beneath Notre Dame's flying buttresses to shore up the fragile structure. Meanwhile, water has saturated the vaults, adding weight to the weakened stonework, increasing the chance of a total collapse. And without the roof, the building remains open to the elements. Before they can make the structure watertight, workers have to remove 40,000 burned and melted scaffolding poles left over from the spire restoration. Above the stone vaulting, Notre Dame's roof was completely destroyed by the fire. Now, one of the most complex challenges is to entirely rebuild the 1,000-ton timber and lead roof. Chief Architect Rémi Formant will oversee the reconstruction of the medieval roof structure, known as the Forest. The fire, which started in the forest, took just hours to reduce this medieval masterpiece to ashes.
We're going to participate in the reconstruction of this absolutely emblematic, absolutely unique, absolutely magnificent and absolutely iconic work, so it's very exciting. It was one of the first great Gothic frameworks, extremely well designed and ahead of its time from a technical point of view.
To reconstruct the roof identically, they must fill the 3 gaping holes in the stone vaulting, rebuild the timber framework from almost 1,000 oak beams, cover it with thousands of square feet of lead tiles, and raise the iconic 210-foot spire. It's the largest restoration project in the cathedral's history. Rémi's team will need 850 oak trees to reproduce the Gothic roof trusses. The cathedral spire will be built from another 1,200 trees.
The spire is a huge task to understand.
The spire was a 400-ton engineering masterpiece. Hidden beneath the 16 copper statues and over 100 tons of lead tiles was a complex skeleton of oak beams, some as long as 65 feet. The secret of its strength, a dense lattice of oak tied into the rest of the roof, supports the entire structure.
The spire came to be the embodiment of the building and of the Paris skyline, which took huge imagination and levels of engineering and creativity and architecture, which is quite exceptional.
Reconstructing this wooden wonder to match the lost spire is no simple task. Oak will form the backbone of the spire, but it will be wrapped in a heavy metal, lead. Although the spire was almost completely incinerated, its pinnacle survived the inferno. Lodged in the vaulting stone, the team gently nudges it free and carefully winches it down.
We can still see the structure of the spire was made with these fine lead sheets of a few millimeters thick that were used on the entire structure of the spire.
They find 6 decorative lead roses attached to the spire section.
We will be able to study how this decoration was made, touching the spire that was just taken down from the vaults today. It's a magical moment.
From the nails that join timber beams to iron bars that brace and hold secure the stunning medieval stained glass.
I was amazed that there's so many iron in this building that was never truly studied before. The staples that we see here, they're embedded in maybe the oldest part of Notre Dame's masonry.
These 18-inch long iron staples secure the great arches beneath and prevent the stone blocks from collapsing under the enormous weight. 65 feet above, along the very top of Notre Dame's walls, the destruction of the roof has revealed previously concealed ironwork that may have made the structure's height and slender form possible.
It's really exciting because we're dealing with unknown structures on the top of the walls that are so far unique in Gothic architecture.
Medieval builders may have worried that the top of Notre Dame's tall, slender walls could be an Achilles heel. The weight of the roof could push the stones apart. The destruction of the roof has revealed the builders joined these stones together with more than 500 staples, creating a ring of iron holding the walls together. This engineering masterstroke has remained hidden under the roof of Notre Dame for hundreds of years. These hidden iron staples may have also played a critical role in saving the building in the wake of the fire.
The staples were placed by the medieval master mason to reinforce the upper main walls. They might have helped the walls to prevent collapsing during the fire.
As a conservationist, it's teaching us how expert these builders were in those days. It's a testament to their technical competence and their vision that they put in these structural elements which have preserved the building for us.
The clock is ticking for the architects and restorers. To meet the challenge of reopening Notre Dame in 2024, the workforce here has increased dramatically. Up to 200 people pass through the site each day. But the lead dust that coats every surface makes operating here potentially dangerous. Protective clothing is essential. Blaise Gomi is part of a team dedicated to safeguarding workers from the deadly effects of lead poisoning. Without them, this huge operation would grind to a halt.
Lead, as you know, is harmful, so they must be equipped. We give them overalls, underwear, boots and helmets. And when they leave, they take showers to make sure they eliminate as much lead as possible.
To make the site safe, the team's next challenge is to remove all the toxic lead dust. They tackle the cleaning zone by zone, eventually decontaminating the entire cathedral. But this operation kicks dust into the air. Workers in an area being cleaned must wear heavy-duty breathing equipment. Clara Dupuidobi is one of 40 decontamination experts that use special vacuums to meticulously clean every inch of Notre Dame's vaulting, walls, pillars, and floors.
With this equipment, we only work 2 hours and a half at a time, and we need to stop to take a break. We go have lunch, 2 hours and a half, and we go home.
Vacuuming the lead dust will take 8 months. Then restorers can move on to deep clean the stone. As each new segment of the cathedral was constructed, another section of timber roof, known as the forest, was built to cover it. Hand axes were used to craft each individual beam in the medieval roof structure. The fire, which started in the forest, took just hours to reduce this medieval masterpiece to ashes. The team will soon begin an unprecedented challenge to rebuild the forest in under 2 years.
We're going to reuse techniques that are extremely similar to what was used, because it's technically necessary.
few staffers race through falling embers to rescue precious relics.
When President Macron said 5 years, we knew that this point here was the most challenging space.
Similar transformations are everywhere in the new Notre Dame. Stone walls and ceilings that had been dark and gloomy seem to shine, and so do the many marble statues and decorative metalworks. The workers and craftspeople who have pulled all this off are known as companions, and their work is celebrated on huge banners overlooking the River Seine, all topped by a new spire and a new roof, replacing the utter destruction of 5 years ago.
Wrapped timber in lead, which has really led to the downfall as to why it was so combustible, unfortunately. And then the spire itself also being wrapped timber in lead, which has really led to the downfall as to why it was so combustible, unfortunately. The sad thing is, unfortunately, if fire, as we all know, timber's combustible, and if fire takes hold, it's been able to take hold of the structure very quickly.
Yeah.
In February 2024, the gradual dismantling of this forest made of metal finally revealed the spire and its ornaments, restoring the cathedral's historic silhouette. Standing tall at 96 meters above the ground, this spire once again marks ground zero, the starting point for all of France's roads.
The total cost of restoring Notre Dame is nearing $1 billion, including, Philippe Jost told us, for measures to prevent another tragedy.
So you have new fire detection, new fire suppression systems that have all been installed.
Installed in the roof.
So that would prevent another catastrophe like this from ever happening again?
We are very confident in that. It will not happen again.
Jost also expressed confidence that rebuilding the new Notre Dame using the old materials of wood and stone and lead will help it to last. Architect Philippe Villeneuve championed the use of traditional materials, especially to build the towering new spire just as the old one had been constructed. But he let us in on a secret. There is one new touch up there.
J'ai laissé moi-même une petite trace de moi.
I left a small mark of myself, he told us. In one of the hooks of the new spire is my face, with an admiring and affectionate look to represent all the companions who rebuilt the cathedral.
I think it's a strange vanity that makes us think we're the only ones in the solar system.
The fire that they're having at the Notre Dame Cathedral is something like few people have witnessed. It was burning at a level that you rarely see a fire burn. It's one of the great treasures of the world, greater than almost any museum in the world, and it's burning very badly. It looks like it's burning to the ground. The reason renovation, what's that all about?
And what have you learned about Notre Dame? Anything in particular that you've learned through your work here?
So far, we've gained an understanding of the mechanisms that came into play during the incident. How the fire has affected the stones, how the lead spread into the air and covered some of the walls. So, in all, we've learnt that the fire that happened at Notre Dame wasn't very different to a fire at any other building. What is different is the emotion that comes with it. Here in the laboratory, a lot of our work has to do with removing lead. So, in all, we've learnt that the fire that happened at Notre Dame wasn't very different to a fire at any other building. What is different is the emotion that comes with it.
Can you tell us what you're doing in this laboratory?
We've learned that the fire that happened at Notre Dame wasn't very different to a fire at any other building.
Thick, yellowish fumes, a billowing smoke cloud typical of burning lead. On the 15th of April, more than 300 tons of lead went up in smoke.
We've learnt that the fire that happened at Notre Dame wasn't very different to a fire at any other building.
During the fire, hundreds of tons of lead melted and then settled as toxic dust all over the building, adding to the dust that had been building up since the 19th century.
We must remove this pollution, in particular the lead oxides that have settled and mixed with the initial dust.
More than 450 tons of lead in the roof and spire melted in the blaze. Partially vaporized in the air in the form of microparticles, the lead presented a health risk for both Parisians and site workers.